verse number 19 and 20. Marajal bahrain yaltaqiyan, bainahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan. That it is Allah who has let free two bodies of flowing water, which meet. And between them, there is a barrier which is forbidden to be trespassed. The Arabic word barzakh means a barrier. And the Arabic statement, Maraj al-Bahrain yaltaqiyan, means the flowing bodies of water, they meet and mix. Previously, the commentators, they could not understand the two opposite description of the two bodies of flowing water. It says they meet and mix, as well as it says there's a barrier between them. The commentator of the Quran could not explain what did this verse actually mean. It was confusing. Today, we have come to know with the help of science that there is a slanting barrier between the two bodies of salt water and sweet water, between the salt sea and the sweet sea. And whenever water passes from one sea to the other sea, it loses its characteristic and gets homogenized into the water it flows. There is a barrier. But this barrier is called as a transitional homogenizing space or area. Both the waters, though they meet and mix, but the characteristics yet remain the same. Salt water remains salt, the sweet water remains sweet. And this phenomena can be seen in Cape Point, southernmost tip of South Africa in Cape Town, where salt and sweet water meet, but they are distinct. They don't mix. When they flow across, the water changes its characteristics. Similar thing can be observed in Egypt when River Nile flows into the Mediterranean Sea, as well as the example of Gulf Stream, which starts in the Gulf of Mexico, though it flows for thousands of miles. Both the water, salt and sweet water, they are distinct. And if you're traveling in a boat, and if you pick up water from one side of the boat and water from the other side, you'll find that both the waters are different. One is sweet and the other is salty. Even the temperature differs. Even in the area of Gibraltar, the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Ocean, there is an unseen barrier. And this was confirmed, this phenomena which the Quran speaks about, was confirmed by Professor Hay, who is a leading Marine of USA. The Quran asks the people that which of the favors of thy Lord will you deny? In Surah Rahman itself, chapter 55, this verse, then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny, is repeated no less than 31 times. It speaks about a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about trees, about the heavens, and then asks you, then which of the signs of thy Lord will you deny? It speaks about what cycle, and then asks you, then which of the signs of thy Lord will you deny? It speaks about the barrier between the sweet and the salt water, and then asks you, which of the signs of thy Lord will you deny? The Quran in one chapter itself, it's asking its reader, which of the signs of God Almighty will you people deny? It's prodding you that all these signs, from where do they come? Which of the signs will you deny? In the field of biology, the Holy Quran says in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. We have created every living thing from water. Will you not then believe? Imagine, in the deserts of Arabia, where there was scarcity of water, the Quran says everything was created from water. Who would have believed in it? Anything else the Quran would have said, people could have believed. Water, where there was scarcity, the Quran says 400 years ago, every living thing is created from water. Today we have come to know that cytoplasm, which is the basic substance of the living cell, contains 80% water. Every living creature contains 50 to 70% water. And without water, the living creature cannot survive. It's a must. Quran asks you, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. We have created from water every living thing. Will you not then believe? Allah is saying that everything is created from water, which you came to know today. Quran mentions that 1400 years ago. Will you not then believe? It's asking a question. It wants a reply. The Quran says in Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 45, that we have created every living animal from water. The Quran says in Surah Furqan, chapter 25, verse number 54, we have created the man from water. Imagine, 1400 years ago, the Quran mentions this. In the field of botany, we have come to know recently that even the plants have got sexes, male and female. Previously, we did not know that. Even the unisexual plant has got distinct characteristics of male and female. The Quran says in Surah Taha, chapter number 20, verse number 53, it is Allah who sends down water from the sky and causes diverse pairs of plants to grow, each separate from the other. That means the plants have got sexes, male and female. The Quran says in Surah Ra'd, chapter number 13, verse number 3, we have created every kind of fruit in pairs, 2 and 2. Even the fruits have got sexes, male and female. In the field of zoology, the Holy Quran says in Surah Anam, chapter number 6, verse number 38, that we have created every living animal that lives on the earth and every bird that flies on the wings in the air to live in communities like you. Today, science has discovered that even the animals and birds live in community like the human beings. The Quran describes the flight of the bird in Surah Nahl, chapter 16, verse number 79. That do you not look at the bird subjected in the midst in the air? None of them can hold them up except with the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran repeats in Surah Mulk, chapter 67, verse number 19. Do you not observe the birds above you? They spread their wings and they fold it. None can hold them up except with the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He watches over all things. This verse of the Holy Quran, there is a very striking resemblance with what modern science has discovered today, that the birds have got a certain migratory programming in the nervous system. That's the reason that young birds, without any prior experience, can take flights of thousands of miles without a guide. And they come back to the departure point also. And a very good example is given by Professor Hamburger in his book, Power and Fragility of the Mutton Bird. The mutton bird lives in the Pacific. It has a journey of more than 15,000 miles, and it takes about 6 months. And it comes back to the departure point in a delay of not more than 1 week. How is it possible? The scientists say there has to be a certain programming of these birds. Who is programming them? But natural, as the Holy Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds them up. The Arabic word, amsaka, meaning to seize or to hold. The Quran says in Surah Nahl, chapter 16, verse number 68 and 69, that it is the Lord who has taught the bees to build cells in hills, in trees, and human habitations, and to eat of what the earth produces, and to find the spacious path of the Lord with great skill. What does the Quran mean by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught the bee to find the spacious path of the Lord? Von Frisch, who is a scientist, he got the Nobel Prize in 1973 when he described the behavior of the animals, especially the communication method of the bee. And today we have come to know that whenever a worker bee finds a new flower or a new garden from where it can take nectar, it goes and tells its fellow bees the exact direction and map of that new flower or garden. It's called as the bee dance. Only today we have come to know by high photographic methods how is this communication given. The gender used in the Holy Quran in these verses of Surah Nahl chapter 16, verse 68 and 69 is a female gender, kulli or fasluki, which means a female bee. Previously we thought it was the male bee which was the worker bee. No wonder Shakespeare in his play Henry IV, he writes that the soldier bee, the male bee, goes and reports to the king. Today we have come to know it is not the king which they report to, it's the queen. And the worker bee is not the male bee, it's a female bee. Quran speaks about the gender of the worker bee 1400 years ago, which we have discovered today. The Holy Quran says in Surah Ankabut, chapter 29, verse number 41, that as to those who take for protectors anyone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they build for themselves houses like that of the spider. And verily, the house of the spider is fragile. It is delicate. Besides the Quran saying that anyone who takes for protectors anyone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the physical nature of the house will be like that of the spider, fragile, delicate, flimsy. It also gives a reference to the family life, which we have come to know today, that many a times the female spider kills the male spider. The Quran says in Surah Nahl, chapter 27, verse number 17 and 18, that before Solomon marched the hosts of jinns, men, and birds, and when they reached a lowly valley of ants, one of the ants said, "Get ye into your habitations, lest Solomon and his hosts unknowingly will trample you beneath the feet." People will think, what kind of a fairy tale book is the Holy Quran?